What's up, guys? This is What If Issei Refused to be Rias' Slave, Part 3, 18 plus. So, I had an idea for this one. We have to start it off with a little bit of a different idea than normal. We need to start off with something that makes more sense. So, we're gonna start off with, like I said, the battle against Kokobeel. Now, we have to admit, it's not exactly an easy battle to do. Mainly because Kokobeel's strong as shit. And no one on the team really could handle him. Or at least, not when they were. But now they could. At least better. So, like I was saying, issei has to begin this battle a little bit different than he normally would. He has to begin it against... So we're going to start with him first meeting Zenobia and Irina. He would meet them because, one, they were already going to visit him because childhood friend, and two, because, well, Zenobia wanted to meet this guy and see if he really was a devil. They walk in there and they feel the presence of the devil in him, but they also feel something else. Not just devil. It's as if there's multiple things with him, mainly because of the dragon that's in him that he has way more merged. Now, he would start to talk with Drake and ask Drake what's going on. And him and Drake actually had response against the holy swords that were being wielded by the two pieces of Excalibur. But this is when issei had an idea. He went to 100% of his power around them, and at this point he's been training for a good bit, but he knows he's not quite there strong enough. But there is some stuff he could do. So he lets a little bit loose. Hearing about who they have to deal with is Kokobeel. And when they said they have to talk to the reigning devil of this area, issei started to laugh in their faces. They said, "What's so funny?" And he said, "I'm the reigning devil of this area." Technically Red Dragon Emperor of this area, but still. They basically all listen to me because of shit that's happened in the past. No big deal. Really, so your talking is going to be with me. Can we still not do it here? Don't worry, there's a club we can go to at my school. Alright? Next day, issei walks them to the club. Now, it's at the end of school though, so the club wasn't really surprised, but they weren't exactly not surprised either. And being that it was issei's new room, like club room, they were all a little bit shocked, but not entirely, when they saw issei going a little bit bigger than everyone else. Basically, he walked in all cocky. But he had a reason for it. So, Rias had started to act like she was the big boss until issei said, "Get off my chair." As Rias got back to her position, standing in a maid uniform with all the other girls, they basically said, "Alright." Now, this is when Kiba told issei about, the whole crazy thing about the two Excaliburs they were wielding, and issei said, "Wow, those bitches." Anyway, he'd basically be a little bit mad, saying, "So why'd you bring holy swords into my area?" Well, as they say, what happened, and issei's like, "Oh, hell no. You'll have a less than 5% chance against someone of that level. Hell, I have a less than 20% chance against someone against that level in my current power. Then again, I probably have a higher point if I'm really mad." As Drake straight up states that if they couldn't even beat issei and Kiba, they have zero shot against this guy. He's a tin wing. One of the strongest fallen angels, if not the strongest at this point in time, that could even go toe-to-toe with the original God and Satan's and live to tell the tale. Hearing this, they would actually straight up say, "We know what our odds are." As Drake would say, "Then you know how fucked you are right now, don't you?" "Yes, but we're confident we can win." "Your confidence is going to get you killed." "We know, but it's fine." As issei would say something that would really surprise them. "Look, I'm not going to say that you're going to die instantly out there, but you may as well. I say you may last 2 minutes at highest. That's at highest, though. And that would be if you're using your different weapon. This is when Zenobia said, "How do you know about that?" Look, right at my arm. Well, Issei's arm. As they look at Drake, as they see something. It basically looks like a green gem, but this is when he shows a pupil through it, basically looking like his eye. I see through this arm. I see everything, and I can see through magic. So I can see that you have the dimensional gap. You have the dimensional hold for the Randall. That would mean you must be the natural wielder of it. Am I correct? Yes, you are. I fought the original wielder of Durandal. She was a lot stronger than you. So, I will say this. Don't be an idiot. And don't go out alone. Even if you were to dual wield Excalibur Destruction and Durandal, you would have 0 shot against him. And that's with your blades both all clashing at him at once. And that'd be assuming he's alone, which I highly doubt. Since Kiba told me about what happened with the other one. Freed, with his 2 holy swords. Hearing this, they'd be surprised and a little scared of what they have to deal with. A wielder of 2 holy swords, a cadre class fallen angel, and possibly more. As Rainier would say, yeah, that's about it. Issei took care of all the other exorcists that were there in our group, so there isn't really anyone else. As Donaseek said, yeah, I'd say you're pretty much going to be screwed over if you fight them like this. What do you mean? Well, let me put it to you like this. You'd be less fucked over if it was Azazel himself coming after you. As all the girls would basically stand up and say, well, Issei, looks like you have a hell of a fight on your hands. Issei looked at them and said, you know why he's here, right? He's going to be here to kill you two. Rias and, well, Sona. Sona hearing this saying, we're gonna die, aren't we? You already don't like us. As Issei said something that shocked them. This is my domain. He's going to come and try to kill 2 of my servants. He's begging for death if he does. What? Look. I'm going to have y'all make a barrier. Pointing to the old student council. What I need you to do is basically just have the barrier hold for long enough. Once you've done that, we're good. How long will I need to make it last? Until either I take down Kokabeel, or until Kokabeel has broken through it himself. So in other words, until I die or he dies. One or the other. That thing's either going to come down then, or by force. So, I have to go deal with it. As Kokabeel would say something that kind of shocked them. Well, not Kokabeel, but Drake would say, this is Kokabeel. Even he was able to put hands on me in the Great War. Where would you place him on the rank of strongest beings alive? Well, strongest beings in existence. Most likely around 24th. Wait, there's that much of a difference? Yes. And how much would you place me at right now? Base form with 0 boost. Possibly 312. What about with 1 boost? 300 even. And 2 boosts? Around 250. But that's where you start to slow down. You go from 50 to 42 to 43. From 250 to 243. Down to 205. And then your current max of 10 boosts, you only make 194th. Or 108. At your strongest. And that would be you letting loose completely, going all out. What if I was enraged? Well, if he was able to piss you off enough, you'd most likely become 94th. So still nowhere near strength. No, you wouldn't. And 94th is max, right? How long until he would get here, though? Possibly a week. How far could I get in that point? Well, I'd say roughly quadruple your current force. Base form? Base form. How many boosts would I be able to gain? Quite a bit. Look, Drake, me and you need to train for long periods. My group as well. At this point, all the guys would show up saying, well, what would happen if we all went at him at once? Being that you're all around Issei's level, I wouldn't put you much on the level of this thing. So what would happen if we all jumped him? All of you, except for the slaves, as in just the guys, well, just Issei's peerage, you'd probably last an hour and a half. And then all be dead at that point. What happens with the slaves? Your chances become closer to about a 50-50, whether you'd win or lose. What if we start training now? Well, if I'm right, and it takes a week for him to get here, then you may have a shot. And that's only because Kokibill decided to fly there and not teleport. But this is when they hear something that kind of surprises them. Zenobia said she could whoop Issei as she was. And Kiba was ready to cut her head off and break her little holy sword. So it became a real fight. As this is when Issei would say something like, calm down, you two. You're both strong swords wielders. We don't need to weaken our attack power, but me and Kiba do need to get quite more akin to taking light against us. So, as Donostik stood up, and the entire group of the people stood up, the girls of the slaves would all have to train together. Basically, Rias, her peerage, and basically the entire peerage would mainly just hold out on making barriers and breaking them. Making it where Sona would actually have a strong enough barrier to withstand all of Rias' destruction magic and keep it held for about 2 more minutes. But the second another attack hit it, in those 2 minutes it would basically shatter. So Issei would train to his max point, and Drake would state that even at the current point where he's actually almost there to achieving Balance Breaker, if not actually at the given point, he just needs the rage to obtain it. Since this is an Issei who has had the time of training. He's done nothing but train with Drake, take beatings. He's stronger than he was in canon. At this point, about twice his original strength. This is when Drake would say, I don't think you're roughly his strength anymore. How much am I now? As Issei was boosting out, and he didn't even have Balance Breaker, he was at his peak for without it. Maybe he could achieve one more boost, and that was it. He achieved the last boost at the last seconds, showing exhausting as he was, with his full strength with a 1 punch, saying that would place him in 19th place with that boost. But that would be it. Hearing that he was finally stronger than Kokibill 1-to-1, he said, so I got 1 punch that'll be stronger than him. Yes, but that's it. So who fills the gaps between those? Well, mainly gods. Surprisingly enough, Kokibill is actually the second strongest of the fallen angel generals, other than Azazel. Really? So, who's the other one? Well, it's a man with lightning powers. What's his name? Sadly, I forgot over time. Actually, I think I know it. It's Brachule, I think. Brachule. Hearing this, Akano would just basically turn her head and turn around and walk away. Issei says whatever. Odd reaction and a name, but whatever. But this is when Issei had an idea. Training. He needed to train with light-based abilities. So, he went against Donostik, Kiba, his entire group. And at one point he said, everyone versus me. And 1 boost away from his max, so he could probably handle it for about an hour. He'd probably stay at them for a while. As he was stronger than all of them, and actually ranked probably around 25th, he was almost at the point where he could fight, where he'd be at the point where he would if he was fighting against Kokibill. And it was actually a strong fight. They fought for almost a full-on hour. And after that point, they kind of collapsed. Issei hit the floor first, and the only one left standing was Donostik. And this was the last point, since Kiba stood up with the blade, and him and Donacy clashed one last time as they both hit the floor. Ravel picked up her feet, stood up for a second after healing herself, since she didn't really take much physical damage, using Phoenix Tears on them all, knowing that they're exactly hard to make, but still doable. Since this would be enough for them to easily have the power, they could fight. Doesn't Issei want to test what his new max was, but thing is, he only has a day until it gets here. As he trains, as he full-on forces it, boosting and boosting, thinking about losing everyone, you hear balance breaker. As his final boost would happen, to his max being where he was ranked probably around 3rd, where Drake would place him at the rank 12th at his best. In that form, he wasn't, as the king, he was ranked 12th when he was at his full berserk when he was at his full max power, but if he was enraged, it'd probably go down significantly to around rank maybe 5th or 6th. He'd be at least Surzex's level if enraged at this point, but he only was able to barely go into Balance Breaker. Next day he started training in Balance Breaker, but this is when he would have to deal with having to fight Donaseek, having to fight against Freed, not fighting Donaseek. When he first meets Kokobile, Kokobile says that night at the schoolhouse is when they're going to fight. As Irina was still injured by Freed, but was stopped when Issei jumped in and drop-kicked him to the mouth. Being that Freed knew how fucked he was, he threw a light bomb that basically blinded Issei for a second as he escaped. Now, this would be enough for Issei to figure out that fighting against Freed like this wasn't the best idea, especially not when he only hadn't even boosted yet. And he knew he'd have to train a little bit harder to fully beat Kokobile. As Issei was ready to just go into it, he turns on Balance Breaker and starts going all out on his ass. It's enough to injure Freed significantly in his one punch that he was able to land before Freed vanished out of there. As Kokobile basically said, Freed, you just got your ass whipped. Luckily, we still have some of Donaseek's old collection. As they gave Freed one of the Phoenix Tears they had, this is when they're surprised. Freed had a secret thing placed on it. A kind of bomb if he wasn't the one opening it. Sure, anyone could open it, given they have magic, but only Donaseek could open it without destroying all the merchandise. As the entire thing exploded in their face, Kokobile with his speed was able to only catch about 2 of them. These 2 Phoenix Tears, one he just used on Freed, the other he had himself in his pocket. This is when the night would occur. With Irina basically being laid the fuck out, Issei did something unexpected. He basically noted that her sword was gone, and he would go over there and get it back. Knowing he had a blade of his own, he would go against this. As Issei would actually look eye to eye with the entire group, saying, "Are you ready to fight like you've never fought before?" "Yes, we are." As he looked eye to eye with Donaseek, saying, "What wings are you at this point?" "I'm at 6 wings right now." "You think you can take him?" "Possibly." "Let's make that ascertained." This is when Issei would actually get them to get out of their shells more and actually start to fight. He would mainly go against the entirety of Kokobile. He said, "I'll hold Kokobile back for a while." Basically having Sona's peerage and herself holding this thing down. Having his own peerage fight at their best. Kiba and Donaseek looked at each other and started flying towards this thing at full force and speed. Donaseek landed a punch, and Kiba landed a slash that actually showed to injure the wings of Kokobile, who used them to block. Zenobia went for a slash that bounced her blade off like it didn't even do anything, not even shedding a feather. But then Donaseek was hit in the mouth as not Donaseek. The Kokubio was hit in the mouth hard as hell by an issei full force punch. As issei pulls out, Durandal starts slashing at this thing as hard as he can, even getting to the point where he's actually starting to injure the mighty Kokubio. Issei's barely in Balance Breaker and hasn't boosted much though. He's at the point where he's probably about half as strong as Kokubio. Then he does it again, and 2 more boosts. He's walking Kokubio like a dog at this point. He's kicking Kokubio's ass to the point where Kokubio is laid out flat. As there's the new strongest variation of Excalibur so far, they're actually starting to have a showing victory. Until the point where they start to actually show that they're getting their asses kicked. As Issei's able to basically take the Excalibur and basically throw it to Kiba as Kiba made his new sword, the Holy Devil Sword. As Kiba dual-wielded the Excaliburs, he absolutely beat the hell out of Freed. Freed using a regular-ass blade at this point. Not like a holy... I'm gonna say it was a base level, like, blade. Like one of the old swords that was like a light sword, and that's all he had. And that was basically what Freed was trying to use against Kiba, until Kiba absolutely started dogging his ass. Freed's able to somewhat escape, though, and using his light magic, he's able to get out of there, while everyone else is actually about to kick their ass. As Freed's basically escaping, when that guy realized that God was dead, Kokubio kills him with 1 light spear as Issei starts to beating his ass again. As this is when Kokubio was starting to actually start taking the upper hand when Issei was running out of time in this form. He fell out of Balance Breaker and got 1 last uppercut, just to get hit by a beam of destruction in his back by Rias, seeing that Kokubio was basically laid out at this point. As Issei is laying on the floor, can barely even breathe, with huge amounts of injuries on him, Kokubio grabbed his Phoenix Tear and busted on top of him, saying, "You thought you won, but you're completely screwed." Rhea said, "Oh hell no, we can't take him without Issei." This is when they were debating about just letting Rias be killed by this thing, until Kiba is the one who jumps in first, as he gets sent flying backwards into the wall, holding the Cadre class Fallen Angel with his blades, saying, "I won't let you put a hand on her." As Kiba started doing his best, but Donaseek was doing his damnedest with light spears, making about 3 of them, throwing 1 and using dual wielding on the others, trying to beat Kokubio. Kokubio easily kicking his ass. Gasper was slowing Kokubio down to the most he could, making Kokubio look like he was basically slow motion, getting his ass whooped. Zenobia knew God was dead, and so did Ostia, so they couldn't heal or help in the battle. As this is when you get to see the rage thrown by Ravel, as fire surrounded her body. It surrounded Issei as she picked him up, hugging him into her chest, as she yelled, "My Issei, you bastard!" Turning towards Kokubio, unleashing the biggest fireball recorded in recent history, probably only matched by the strength of her family at their peak. As we get to see her full-on phoenix form, surrounding in a dress of flames, she walked forward as the one she called her husband laid next to her, being surrounded by a suit of flames. As his body stood up, Issei stood standing, barely alive, but the phoenix flame was healing him. Her tears starting to burn away, but they all went to Issei. He stood up, held Ravel's head into his chest, saying, "Calm down, Ravel, I'm fine. Thank you. I'll deal with this now." Ravel, who basically ran out of hatred for her before she would burn away, she passed out on Issei's chest. As Issei set her down, he said, Drake, come on, balance breaker me. Alright? Balance breaker. As he boosted the max he could, he took on Kokobile. But this is when Volley would break in the barrier, drag Kokobile away, and tear his wings off. Issei said, you know I already had him, right? Volley, as the White Dragon Emperor, would say, you know, my rival, you've reached a point where you're strong enough to keep up, but only when boosted. I'd say you're still weaker than me unless you're boosting, aren't you? Shut up, Volley. How do you know my name? Just a guess. As he was kicked in the chest, Volley would hit the floor. How did you know who I was? Azazel introduced me to you. As earlier, when we met before. So in other words, the old man ratted me out. Well, I mean, he did tell me about you, and that you're the White Dragon Emperor. Since, you know, you were under his control, so he didn't think it'd be a big deal. As Issei and Volley would start to actively fight, they would stop when Azazel stepped in, saying, calm down, come here, dragging Kokobile away, with Volley helping him. As Issei said, Azazel, you couldn't have done that sooner. Oh, don't worry. I had the whole thing on video. You dick. Hey, if it got hairy enough, I would have stepped in. I literally was on the ground dying. And your Phoenix Girl saved you. As Issei walked over to Asya, helping her up, asking if Ravel could make one of them healing things again, she was able to make one tear fall that healed Asya. As Issei said thank you, as he drug Asya over to the, over to the school, as he would pick her up, he wouldn't drag her, he would basically just princess carry her home, as she would wake up almost instantly. He said, don't worry, you still have a lot of shock in you. Come on, I'll take you home. Zenobia, who was in the same condition, decided not to go home with Irina. As Issei would say, I know what to do. Would you like to join my peerage? Yes, but I thought you were out of knight pieces. I am. All I have left are 4 pawns. But does that mean I'm only worth a pawn? Yes, but it also means you can promote to any piece when I allow you to. When will you allow me to? Whenever you want. So basically, I'm allowed to promote to the knight piece whenever. Pretty much, yeah. Alright, then I guess I'll become a devil. As Zenobia would actually sit on Issei's bed after becoming one, and basically pledge her loyalty to him. As Issei now had 3 women in his bed, he thought it was pretty cool. As Rias was trying to atone for her sins with Issei, she tried getting, on his good side. Didn't really work. Sona would try doing the same, didn't really work. And Rainier would try doing the same, didn't really work. As basically, there was only 3 girls that he had kind of, at this point, trusted. So, yeah. All the girls trying to get on the good side of everyone didn't really work. Now, the one who was treating them the nicest out of everyone, surprisingly enough, was Kiba, but he really wasn't being that overly nice. He was just not being an ass. Basically, showing them next to no interest, but still not being rude. Basically, being a knightly persona. As this is when we get to see the difference. As this is when they would decide to go to have the meeting. Issei saw Volley and saying, how you doing, Volley? Mad that I kicked you in the chest? Fuck you, Issei. No. Oh, suck it. Don't say a word or I will throw you. You couldn't put your hands on me. As he was grabbed, saying, it's been a week, dude. I've done nothing but train. And kind of sleep with girls. But fuck you anyway. Wait, sleep with as this is when Asya, Ravel, and Zenobia would all start blushing a little bit, saying, Issei, I thought you wouldn't tell anyone about that. Issei said, oh, come on. We had a lot of fun, didn't we? The girls saying, yeah. As all the Excalibur pieces were gone, Durandal was the only thing Zenobia had left. Issei would occasionally lend her his own blade, but that was about it. And he would always have Kiba make about 4 swords. Granted, he was usually used to making large quantities of blades, so it wasn't really a big deal when he would summon about 4 of them. He would summon 4 of his special blades. Issei would take 2, and he would take 2. Or occasionally he would actually give one to Zenobia, as she would take a Holy Sword and the Holy Devil Sword. And he would use a Holy Devil Sword and his own blade. But, surprisingly enough, Don and Seek had started actually becoming really good friends with Kiba. And there was times when they would all train together as the guys. Mitsuda, Motohanma, and Saji would all train with them. Even Gasper would train physical strength every now and then, wielding blades. Though it was actually kind of rare to find him holding one. As this is when the difference of the series would really start to show. As Issei wouldn't be a virgin anymore. He would have had sex with 3 of the girls. You know, the ones I already claimed he would have. Now, this is when it was revealed that they're all pregnant. And they weren't going to hide it. Hearing this, first person to react was Michael, saying, "How unholy. Baby's out of wedlock." This is when he would say, "Well, I don't blame you, child." This is when Sozex would say, "Well, I'm fine with that." And surprisingly enough, because there was one more person who appeared, Riser, because this concerned his little sister. Not knowing what was happening until then, if he had known, he would have tried flash frying that little fucking burnt turkey already. Or that little fucking crow, he would have tried burning him to a burnt little to a burnt crow. But instead, he only finds out about it over phone. He teleports in, saying, "What the fuck?" As Issei had seen Riser, he had said, "Hold on, Riser, before you make a single fucking rage at me." Note, she was safe the whole time. The only time she wasn't safe is when she was throwing fireballs at him. What do you mean? As this is when Azazel would pull out the camera and show them all the video on a magical projection. They see the beginning of the battle to the end of the battle. They see the moment when Ravel kisses Issei and heals him. And they see the moment when Issei stood up, enraged, holding her to his chest as he set her down, as he would walk forward towards Azazel, towards Kokobile. Seeing all this, they would be really impressed, and surprisingly enough, you would hear large amounts of praise from Riser. This is when Riser said, "If I'd have known this would have happened, I would have joined you myself for this fight." This is when they hear that anyone in Issei's team could have beat Riser's ass. Riser saying, "What?" Other than his sister, they were all far weaker. And magic-wise, his sister had more than him. Riser hearing this saying, "What? Dude, you need to train more." Issei saying this made Riser say, "Alright, I will. One day, I will train to the point where I'm stronger than you." "Alright, if you say you will." Revealing he now has 4 wings and that he's been training quite a bit. This is when Drake said, "My assumption were quite wrong about you. Maybe you're stronger than part of our team, but not by much." As Issei showed his own full power without even boosting, it equaled out with Riser's to an almost perfect match, even if Issei had a slight underhand a bit. But this is when he flexed with 1 boost and made himself even. Well, made it where he was basically showing over Riser by almost all of it. As Riser would say, "Alright, fair point." This is when Issei showed that he had Balance Breaker now. But because Gasper wasn't held back in this version, they can't freeze time. But they do still try to fuck with things by scaring Gasper. Gasper knows that he can't stop all of them at once. And there's so many of them that they kind of have all of the 3 powers holding a barrier up so they can protect the weaker ones there. Issei looks at them all saying, "Hold on." As this is when looks at Volley and saying, "Volley, can we take him?" At that high of a number, hardly. So what's our chances? 50-50. If we're both going out there Balance Breaker or Blazin'. What would be our chances if we had 1 more on our level? Probably a little bit higher, but not by much. So what's our chances if my entire group and me go out there at once? Without me, probably about a 50-50. You guys think you're as strong as all of them combined? Yeah, I'm just able to divide powers, which is something your group can't. What would happen if we all went out there together, all the guys? Well, we'd probably stand a better chance, maybe even a 90-10, but at the same time, I don't know if we could. This is when he told Gasper to slow them all down as much as he could. Zenobia would have to go out. If she wanted to, she can go out there. But this is when she said, what about the baby? Alright, fine, you don't have to go, but build your power up a little bit at least. Alright. Thing is, there was something that wasn't revealed. The slaves of Issei said something that kind of scared him. They said, we're all pregnant. Issei says, what? Rias, Sonovi, and Asia say, Rias, Akano, and Konoko all say that it's Issei's child. Issei says, wait, what? Zerzek says, alright. Look, Issei, I wouldn't usually ask this of you. What are you gonna ask? Take responsibility for what happens and raise these children to be better than their parents. Alright, fine. But you owe me one, man. Alright, whatever. Looks like now you have 4 wishes. I'll cash them in sometime. Actually, first, could you give me, like, power-ups? What do you mean by power-ups? Like a destruction sword? How the hell am I gonna make a destruction sword? Alright, so force a shitload of destruction energy into like a shape. And have Kiba help you with making it into the blade. Kiba's saying, I think I can do it. Given enough magic power into it. As Rias would actually start putting magic in there as well. Showing destruction on a level that even Issei wasn't expecting. As a complete blade of destruction was made. As this is when he said, wow, that took a lot of energy. This is when Michael and Azazel said, well, why don't we help? Fallen light. And a blade of pure light as well. As these were all 3 blades Issei now had, he said, I'm incorporating all of you into my gear. As they all were there, Issei said, oh, by the way, could I get wings from y'all? As a pair of angel wings were gifted to Issei, a pair of fallen wings, and Issei already had devil wings. But they would be strengthened to true devil wings by Sir Zex. And this is when Drake actually stated that he'd already given Issei a pair of dragon wings when he wanted to use them. Perfect. As Issei would do something unexpected, he would power up to his full peak, saying, everyone, get back. Volley saying, fine. As he got behind, Gaspar having them all slow down, Volley had already gathered them into one giant line. Issei yelled, dragon shot! With only being about 4 of them left, after he'd used that, he started gasping for air, saying, looks like I couldn't get them all. No, there was over millions there, so this one dragon shot doing that crazy amounts of damage, it's crazy. As Volley would fly in, taking the other 4 out with one good swing of a dragon shot of his own. As he said, alright, now. As this is when Katia, Leviathan, would appear. A descendant of the original Leviathan came for a swinging. That would have worked if she had any idea of how much strength that took to throw that kind of attack. As Katia would start going to attack, Azazel would have stepped up first, but Issei's the first one to jump in, trying to do a fighting stance. As he winds up sacrificing his right arm, since his left has the gear, Katia hooking onto it, as he basically he surrounded it in all of his power, and basically blew his own arm off. As his right arm is gone, he said, come on, anyone else? This is when Azazel said, man, I've got the perfect thing for you. What do you mean perfect thing for me? Come with me to my lab after this. Alright, as Issei stopped the bleeding with his force to hold it still, as they basically held him strong until the point. With Issei now having his arm back. Well, not having his arm back, but given the same one Azazel had given himself an original thing, Issei was actually given something different. The original arm He's given a new arm, but this one had another thing. It had Bahamut, or I'm not actually sure the name of the actual dragon he had in canon, but I'm going to call it Bahamut. I mean, the dragon that Azazel had. He said it was an old one he had for years, that it was an old friend of his, but he didn't want it anymore. So, he would give it to Issei. This is when Issei said, really? But I thought, isn't this one your original? Yeah, but at the same time, man, I know it's in good hands. Well, in one good arm. Let me guess. It fuses to your body. I knew it. Yep. It'll fuse to your body and become one with you, as it's basically only magic. Though it does have a little bit of energy in it, so it will kind of fuse into you. What's it made of? Dragon. What do you mean by that? As it turned into a dragon? Black and arm saying this is its true form. Ah, fuck. Don't worry, it has class. Basically, it fuses to your body and becomes more like you would wish. Or in other words, it becomes you. As Issei said, really. So, in other words, you're basically now more dragon than you were before. But now you have the dragon of destruction. Wait, so in other words, basically it gives us the same kind of destruction energy that Rias and her family give off. So I literally have the destruction ability now. Yep. And it's going to basically be intertwined with my DNA at this point, right? Yep, but you can only cast destruction from your right arm. Or really, it ain't really destruction, it more just cancels out magic. So I'm basically just magic canceling? Yep. And you can get this one to Balance Breaker. It's a golden Balance Breaker, but I feel like if you combine red and gold, it would basically make a kind of shiny one. A gold and red one, which would look badass, but I don't know, man. It has like black gems too, so your call, bro. Great. Sure, I'll know what to do with it. But Issei's still actually wondering what happens if he completely... This is when Azazel said, to get it to fully go through, just channel your magic through all of it, and you're good. This is when we're basically going to have to cut it off, guys. This is the end of part 3.